Hi, my name is Quinn and I'm a member of the FreeFlyer technical support team. Today I'm going to talk about building a custom user interface. To demonstrate this, we're going to walk through the Walker Constellation Sample Mission Plan. The Walker Constellation Mission Plan uses a custom user interface to define a constellation of spacecraft. The user interface allows the user to select a constellation and to define the parameters for it. Following the completion of the user interface, the constellation is built and propagated for 1 day. You can find this mission plan by browsing Sample Mission Plans and going to the Spacecraft Propagation folder. A user interface can be created through the object browser or by using scripting. This mission plan creates 3 user interfaces, all through the object browser. First, let's take a look at the Choose Const Type user interface. The first page displayed when editing the user interface includes the title of the interface and an option to show how the prompts are displayed to the user. The Elements page is where the majority of the user interface gets built. Data elements are what allow the user to make selections and enter information into the user interface. Formatting elements help improve the visualization of the interface. You can add either element type or a new page from the options at the top. The parameter option for a data element selects what will inherit the value from a user selection. In this case, the parameter is the const type variable. Next, you can enter a label for the data element as well as element type. Data element 1 is a multi-choice element, but you could also choose numeric text entry or Boolean choice. You can then select the selection type to either be radio buttons or a drop-down menu. For a multi-choice element, you can add options by clicking the Create or Clone Choice buttons. For each choice, you can select a label and a value. The value for the selected choice will be assigned to the parameter that was selected earlier. Lastly, you need to select the default choice for the data element. Formatting elements can have the element type separator or label. A separator puts a divider in the page, and a label allows the user to input large sections of text. You can also choose whether or not to show the line for a separator. The last data element in this user interface is a Boolean choice that allows the user to select whether to view the constellation as a group. Once you're done editing a user interface, you can select Preview Layout to see what the interface will look like once the mission plan is run. To exit, simply hit Stop Script. Next, let's take a look at Freeform 3 to see how the constellation is initialized. The constellation selection made in the first user interface will determine which constellation gets built here. If the Walker constellation is selected, the value of Choose Const Type will be 0. This prompts the second user interface to launch. The Define Walker Constellation user interface uses several data elements with numeric text entry to define the parameters of the constellation. Numeric text entry elements have the option to perform range validation. This will ensure that the value the user enters is within an acceptable range. For this element, the range is between 1 and 10. If the user selects Input TLE as the option in the first user interface, the Input TLE interface is then launched. This interface uses a data element with string text entry to get the path to a TLE file from the user. Now, let's run the mission plan and go through the user interfaces. We'll select the Walker constellation. Next, we'll set the parameters for the constellation. You'll notice that if I set the number of orbital planes to be 12, FreeFlyer will generate a message letting me know that that's outside of the valid range. Instead, let's set our number of orbital planes to be 8, and let's set 5 spacecraft per plane. We'll put the planes at an 80-degree inclination with an 8,000-kilometer semi-major axis. We'll leave our eccentricity and argument of perigee as is. You'll notice that the spacecraft are in high inclination orbits at a lower altitude than they were before. This is because the parameters that we assigned in the last user interface were applied when the constellation was built. Let's run the mission one more time, this time selecting the Input TLE option on the first user interface. This takes us to the other user interface that we examined earlier. You can either enter a new path to a TLE file on your computer, or you can keep the default path which routes to a TLE file in the Support Files directory. We'll keep the default file path for this run. You'll notice that it now builds a constellation based off of the TLE file we selected. It will then propagate these satellites for 1 day. This completes our overview of the Walker Constellation Sample Mission Plan. If you found this video useful, you can check out the rest of our how-to videos on our AI Solutions YouTube page. Otherwise, if you have any additional questions or issues, please feel free to reach out to our technical support team at any point in time. You can do this by contacting us through email at techsupport@aisolutions.com or by calling us at 301-306-1756 extension 2.